Hello, are we ready to get started again? Ready to go, everybody online?
Yep.
Jennifer, Elaine, are they?
Guess Stuart's left here.
She's left, okay.
And no one else is still on the call.
Okay, great.
It's here, but
she's perhaps just turned her screen off.
Okay.
Right, okay, so we are now moving on to item 9 on the agenda. And Louisa, that's over to you. Thank you.
Good morning and thank you, Chair. Our annual audit plan for the Council outlines a summary of our planned work for the audit of the 23-24 financial year. At paragraph 8, we refer to our responsibilities relating to fraud in the financial statements. We have made inquiries of officers and internal audit around fraud and the arrangements and controls in place to mitigate fraud. In presenting our plan, we invite members of the committee to bring to our attention any instances of actual suspected or alleged fraud, either today or throughout the course of the audit. Exhibit 1 sets out our planning materiality levels. Materiality acts as a benchmark to assess the overall impact of audit adjustments on the financial statements and indicates areas where additional assurance may be required. We have set materiality at 2% of prior year gross expenditure. This is based on our knowledge of the Council and the control environment. And for your information, this is the highest level that we can set materiality. So this is a positive indication of our assessment of the Council. In Exhibit 2, we highlight significant risks of material misstatement to the financial statements that we've identified through our planning work. We've identified 2 risks and we've set out in the plan our planned work to gain assurances. The first risk is around management override of controls. This features in all annual audit plans and it's not unique to the Council. Due to the nature of the risk, management are not able to provide any assurance against this risk. We, however, gain our assurances through a review of journals, estimates, accruals, prepayments and cut-off testing, essentially areas where officers apply judgment or estimations within the accounts. The second risk is around the estimation and the valuation of land, buildings, council dwellings and schools. This is an area with a high level of complexity and judgment, and within the plan we've set out the work we plan to do. We've also identified an area of audit focus around pension valuations. This is an area where we've had ongoing discussions with finance officers around the technical guidance, disclosures within the accounts and the information requests that are sent to the actuary. As noted at paragraph 19, we've rebutted the risk of fraud over revenue recognition following consideration of the Council's income streams and the proportion of income that's received through funding. At paragraph 20, we've rebutted the risk of fraud over expenditure. We consider there to be limited incentive and opportunity for the Council officers to manipulate this, and therefore for both income and expenditure, we are planning our standard audit approach. At paragraphs 22 to 24, we outline that the audit opinion covers the management commentary, annual governance statement and the audited parts of the remuneration report. We will consider the disclosures and whether they comply with the requirements of applicable guidance and confirm that the disclosures reflect the contents of the financial statements and other documentation that we review. Within Exhibit 3, we outline our materiality levels for the charitable trusts that the Council holds. For the charitable trusts, we've not identified any risks from our planning work, with the exception of management override of controls, and we've identified specific work to gain assurances. As part of our audit and in line with the Code of Audit Practice, we undertake wider scope and best value work. At paragraph 34, we note the challenges around the financial environment in which the Council operates, and we've identified this as an area of focus. As part of our audit work, we will review and consider the financial outturn for 23-24, the 24-25 budget and the medium-term financial plans in place. As part of our work this year, we're undertaking a best value thematic review of workforce innovation. This work has been undertaken at all councils in Scotland and will consider how the Council is responding to current workforce challenges. The field work is complete and the draft report is with the officers within the Council for review, discussion and factual accuracies checks, and it will be presented to a future meeting of the committee. Finally, I would like to draw your attention to Exhibit 4 and 5 of the plan. This sets out the timing of the audit and our intention to bring forward the completion of the audit and its certification into September 2024. And this will bring us back into line with pre-COVID deadlines. To achieve this, we've increased the number of staff who will work in the audit, and we've also increased the number of qualified staff who will work in the audit. We have arranged with officers in the council to have a space within the Opera House so that we can meet with officers throughout the course of the audit and progress the audit in a more timely manner and clear points and issues and review documentation that we want to see. We have developed a shared timetable with finance officers to coordinate holidays and to plan and schedule the work. The council in the past year have also undertaken, some people have moved roles within finance. This will increase capacity and resilience because there will no longer be maybe a single point of contact for some areas, and there will be different people who are able to respond to queries. I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Thank you very much, Louisa, and thank you for all of that. Just to pick up on one point, page 148, climate change, paragraph 36. Now, and you've outlined in that particular paragraph what actions are to be taken. And of course, the headlines, the news headlines today have changed the parameters. How do we respond to that? Thank you.
Last year, when we reviewed the strategic plan, we did look quite a lot at the work that was being done within the council around climate change, and we would continue to meet with officers and discuss progress that's been made to date and plans in place. And obviously, if national targets change, then we would be aware of that, but we'd be aware that obviously you can't overnight change your actions. So we would look at the arrangements that are in place within the council to meet those new targets or new challenges that are arising.
Right, okay. Thank you very much. And I guess if one is looking at relaxing some of the challenges and targets, that's perhaps less complicated than increasing them. So I'm guessing that. I mean, will there be any action that will have to take place as a result of that news headline today?
I'm happy to come in, Chair. I think it's very topical, and I'm sure that colleagues in facilities and property management and colleagues across the council will be taking cognizance of the changes that have taken place and how that impacts on the plans that the council has in terms of those strategies and our climate change strategies. So I think it's something that'll be brought back to you, and certainly I'll liaise with colleagues to get maybe a briefing done for members on this once we know more about the full implications of the announcements.
Thank you very much for that. So if I can open that out, any questions? Councillor Maven.
Thank you, Chair. Page 146, Exhibit 3. I was quite surprised to see the Archibald Taylor Charitable Trust popping up here as well as the other ones. I was on that committee and we wound it up because it ran out of funds eventually and we closed it. So I'm wondering how will it eventually come off our records and our responsibility, and it'll cease to exist and you won't have to audit it anymore since there's no money in it.
The reason is I think it was wound up in June 2023, so it's still part of the 23-24 financial year. So that runs from April 2023 to March 2024. So our checks, we're aware that it's wound up, but we will just have to check that all the funds have been dispersed, and then in future years, no, we wouldn't audit it and it won't appear within our planned work.
Thank you. And similar for the other charity that's sitting with £1 in its account. Would that also close?
No, it won't close, but it's not actually got £1 in it. It's our planning materiality is based on the expenditure from the prior year. So there's I couldn't tell you right now how much is in the charitable trust fund, but that's just a indication for us, the level of work, and if there was errors that we noted, changes that would have to be made in terms of the accounts.
I guess to add to that, there is also the Annie Smith Mayor Trust in Newmilns, which Beverly and I are both involved with. And I know there's not much money left in that one either. So I think we'll probably see them all winding up fairly soon. Thank you. Any other questions? No? No? Okay, so we're on to the next report, which is number 9 on the agenda, the Internal Audit Annual Report.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. The annual report for 23-24 and the annual internal audit opinion is presented in the usual format. And as members know, this is a statutory obligation for the Council. And it was mentioned earlier in Ian's Local Code of Corporate Governance report that one of my main responsibilities is the independent appraisal of internal control, governance and risk management. And that evidence-based work we do in a rolling programme follows the plan that you have approved for our workload in year. So basically this is the outcome of that work, and which results in the annual opinion. So it's a positive report. So I'll just highlight some of the paragraphs. In terms of the background, that takes us through all of our detailed statutory responsibilities and the roles and responsibilities within the Council for managing controls, risk management and governance. I'll draw your attention to paragraph 8. There's currently a global review of our SIAS, which is, you all know, is our statutory professional standards. We unfortunately now work in an international environment. We used to work in a UK public sector environment until 10 years ago. So the SIAS were the new international based rules for internal audit. Because of problems elsewhere in the world, those rules are being changed. And at the moment, the proposal is there is potentially between 250 and 300 additional obligations being added to those rules, which is unworkable for local government internal audit. So there is work being carried out in the UK, largely by SIPFA, to influence the outcome and try and get a sensible outcome, particularly for UK public sector. But I'll update members in due course and the impact. We anticipate that position to be finalised over the next year. Paragraph 9, I'm giving committee assurance that we've carried out sufficient work in order to produce the annual opinion. As you know, we don't need to complete the plan, but we need to carry out sufficient work, and sufficient work is basically down to my judgment. But you'll see from appendices 1 and 2, the bulk of the work has been either completed or is being completed, and I've given you the outcomes of each of the assignments. So when those appendices are seas of green, which they are today, that's always good news, because it means we've either completed it or we're about to complete it. If we move on, paragraphs 10 to 12 lay out assurance for committee of our organisational independence and confirm that there's been no impairment to our work and that we've got adequate resources to carry out our priorities, and that again is a statutory obligation. And you'll remember last year we brought, paragraph 12, we brought the external quality assessment report, which as committees aware is an exercise that's carried out every 5 years, where we have an independent examiner to come in to make sure that we're operating independently and operating correctly and providing a quality service. And the examiner from SIPFA attended committee to speak to that report, which was a very, very positive report. There was a few minor aspects in terms of recommendations, one of which was they wanted us to make an impairment statement at this point in the year when we'd finished a year's work, as well as at the beginning of the year. So basically, that's me saying to you, we had no impairment over the last year. And then in the next report today, I have to state to you that we've got no impairment that I'm aware of going forward. So it's double assurance, I suppose, that you're getting in terms of the way that we work. So there's been no inappropriate scope or resource limitations. So basically, we've been left to be independent, and we've got enough people at the moment to deliver that role. If we move on, paragraph 13, I've made a proposal that's presented in recommendation 3, is to slightly change the way that we're going to work over the next couple of months in reporting to committee. This report has previously been called a summary report, but when I reviewed it, it actually has a level of detail in it that it covers all of our statutory obligations for reporting to committee in terms of the audit plan assignments. We would normally in May have brought a report up with detail in it of all the assignments, but you have that detail anyway in the individual assignment reports that are on the councillors' notice board. So I'm not planning to include that detail in the next report that I bring up. Now, it's unlikely to be May because of some short-term resourcing challenges I've got in the team. So it's likely to be June that we bring the next report up. But that report I'm proposing is now rebadged as Performance and Quality Assurance, and we'll bring you our internal audit PIs and our Quality Assurance Improvement Plan, which are the remaining 2 statutory obligations for annual reporting to committee. So basically, you get a slightly shorter second report, but you might get it in June instead of May, but I need to just monitor my resources. You'll definitely get that report before the recess. There's no significant issues that will be raised in that second report either. So I'm just asking committee today to agree to that slight change in terms of reporting. We then go through paragraphs 14 and 15, which provide the current assurance for the trust and internal audit from the judgment from external audit. And then I think we can still rely on the EQA, given that it was only carried out a year ago, and there's been no significant changes in our arrangements as a team in that period of time. If we move down, the outcomes of our work, paragraph 16 just reminds committee of the way in which we present our outcomes in terms of assurance. What does sound assurance mean? What does reasonable assurance mean? So the definitions are all in that table. You've also got the glossary of terms for internal audit, which is on your councillors' notice board. So if I move on and we get to the main report section, which from paragraph 20 talks about the annual opinion. So the annual opinion, which I've included the detail of Appendix 3, which informed the annual governance statement, which you considered earlier, is based on my judgment of the council's arrangements for internal control, governance and risk management based on the work that my team do. So although in my radar, I'll look at what Audit Scotland say, I'll look at what HMIE say, but my opinion is based on my team's work, and which is based on the plan that committee have approved. So the good news is the overwhelming majority of the work that we've completed has resulted in assurance outcomes that are at least reasonable assurance. So they're either reasonable assurance, sound in most areas, or sound assurance. They're all very good scores. So 81% of what we've done has resulted in a very good score, and that's a good position for the council to be in. Paragraph 21 updates you on the follow-ups. You know that every recommendation we make, we follow up by going out and testing the implementation and services. We have completed 5 of those reviews so far and are rattling through a lot more of them this month. So we'll have a lot more to report to you before the recess. But the established pattern of a high level of implementation continues. The 5 reviews that we've carried out so far this year have resulted in evidence telling us that it's been 100% implementation by services. And that's great. We have a very, very high level of implementation of internal audit recommendations in this council. If we move on, the paragraph 22, so my overall opinion is that we can continue to have an annual opinion of reasonable assurance can be placed upon the adequacy and effectiveness of the Council's framework of governance, risk management and control, and the full opinion is laid out in Appendix 3. And members, I wasn't planning to go through the appendices in any detail. Happy to take any questions and on individual assignments. But as soon as assignment reports are completed, they are placed onto the councillors' notice board. So our full reports are always available to all members of the council. So, Chair, I think I'll wrap it up there and allow time for any questions or points of clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. There's obviously a huge amount in this, and I will open this up to the floor. Are there any comments or any questions, please? Councillor Canning.
Thanks, Aileen. Just touching on discussed earlier on about business continuity plans are part of the governance framework. What, from internal audit perspective and an external perspective, how is that? I mean, obviously, in a summary, how is that covered from an audit perspective? Our business continuity plans. And I suppose when was the last time it was looked at?
We have not audited the business continuity plans because when we do a risk assessment, they never score as a high risk because of the amount of attention they're given by other officers in the council. We're well aware of the content. We're available to do advisory work, and we have, I think if I recall, done some small pieces of advisory work in the past. But it wouldn't meet the test to be included in the plan. The statutory obligation I have is to do a risk-based audit plan. Clearly, with 900, almost 1,000 days in a year, there's a limit to what we can do. So we have to target our work to the higher risk areas, whether that's in terms of likelihood or likelihood of impact or likelihood or impact. Of course, the business continuity plans are badly formed. The impact would be, but my view is that it's not an area that's scored high enough in terms of risk. But we are aware of the content of the plans, and we have spoken to relevant officers about the plans. It tends not to be an area nationally that's covered in internal audit plans.
Audit Scotland presumably cover it to some extent.
We do, as part of our audit plan, and we do look at business continuity arrangements in place at the council. We look at whether they're updated, whether they're reviewed, whether they've been tested. And we've not identified any risks from that work that we did that we would take forward to do further detailed work in that. But we do look at it annually as something we would look at.
I thought maybe a thematic audit, and that would be, I'm not going to tell Audit Scotland how to.
Right, well, that may be one in the future, but.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Canning. Any further questions? Councillor Maben.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ellie, for presenting your report. It's a bit like deja vu because I believe I asked the same question last year. If you could tell us a wee bit about your team and the headcount, how many people you've got, any absence level problems, or are you recruiting? Are you looking to bring more people in?
So at the moment, I have 4 qualified staff, so qualified accountants, including myself. And we have 1 very experienced audit assistant. We have a part-time clerical member of staff, and I have 2 graduate, and well, I've had 2 graduate interns this year. One has left for a promoted post, permanent promoted post in the council, and the other one's leaving us next Friday for a promoted post within Joe's side of the business. So we've done very well as an incubator unit. But seriously, if they're good, you don't hang on to your graduate interns. I can't absorb 2 people every time we take on graduate interns. We're out again to recruit, so I'm hopeful we get at least 1 good graduate intern going forward. And there is the potential going forward that we can look at a traineeship there, and we had that in consideration. But the skill sets, I think they found the 2 graduate interns have found found good homes on the council, and that's fabulous. So in terms of my team, our absence levels tend, for the qualified staff, tend not to be notable at all. We do have some absence at the moment. I am waiting for some. I'll be quite frank with you. I have lost the sight in my right eye, and hopefully it's temporary. Sorry. Sorry, it's the first time I've got upset about it, sorry. And one other senior member in the team is just recovering from emergency surgery. But I'm assuming in the next couple of weeks that that'll be resolved. So, yeah, we've got a small team, it's a strong team, but small teams are not resilient. And that's the challenge I've got at the moment. But I'm not seeing any significant impact at the moment. And so EMT are aware of that, sorry. EMT are aware of that, and I think we'll be back to full strength within the next few weeks. So I don't think it'll have a significant impact. And the challenges around that, and I wouldn't even call it a challenge, the change in that sick absence pattern, it's only been over the last couple of weeks. It was effectively after we lodged the report. So I decided not to change it because I don't think the impact's going to be significant. We've got the same recruitment problems that every other council have got, but we're actually, I think, in a good place. If you look at when we go into the plan, which is the next paper we're going to look at today, you'll see that the days that we've got to deliver for the council are sitting at a 5-year average. So I think we're in a good place to meet our obligations for 24-25. We can never cover everything. You wouldn't want internal audit to cover everything because then you'd be spending too much in internal audit if it was covering everything. So we do, and it links into the question that Councillor Canning asked, we do have a risk-based audit plan, and I'm confident that we can deliver in the high-risk areas for the council next year, and we've certainly done that this year. And I think produced quite a strong report. I'm always critical. I'm never complacent with what we've done. I'm always quite critical of what we've done and always looking for improvement. But we sit in a good place, and we sit in a good place nationally, and we're still in that good place. Okay.
Eileen, thank you very much for that, and for telling us the various things going on within the department. Well done.
Yes.
For being the
Thank
incubator.
you. Thank you. Yes. Internal audit has your hearts as well.
That is a tremendous accolade for you in terms of recruiting. Obviously, some very good young people who are then going on to further careers within East Ayrshire. So well done for that. And I think, Joe, I think you did just want to step in there. Thank you.
Very quickly, Chair, and through you. And to be selfish, you know, the Chief Governance Officer and I know the value of internal audit, maybe more than most. We have incredible relations with the team, but besides that, I'm also very aware that in my role and in David's role too, that we rely greatly on the output from the team within internal audit. And so I've had a fair number of meetings with Ailey to discuss additional resource. And you know, that's odd, maybe at a time when, you know, you've just approved £9.7 million of cuts a few months ago, but additional resources with an internal audit. And that's appropriate because of the changes that we discuss at council and at this committee too. And so that option is there too, to provide additional resource from balances from me and others that we can use to bolster the internal audit team, knowing that £1 spent in internal audit, particularly for David and I, is well spent, and it reassures the council and it reassures Louisa and colleagues in external audit too.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any more questions in relation to this particular item on the agenda? Doesn't look like it, so I'm going to suggest we endorse the recommendations at paragraph 2 and move on to the next item, which is back to earlier.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. So this is our internal audit plan for 24-25, which we require committee to formally approve. So you'll be familiar with the background to the work. I'll just touch on a few of the paragraphs. Paragraph 5 mentions the 3 lines of defence model, Appendix 1. This is becoming a very trendy model again. It's been kicking around for years. We always include it in the members' induction, but it's actually quite important at this time, and particularly in a time of unprecedented challenges for local government, that we go back to these models to guide us in terms of assurance. An assurance framework was mentioned earlier. This particular model links into our assurance framework, but also very much into our risk management strategy. And this model was also presented as part of the risk management strategy paper earlier today. So hopefully that gives you a useful illustration of where we fit in, where internal audit fit in terms of that assurance model. If we move on, the paper lays out again of paragraphs 12 following is statutory obligations, so sets out my requirements as my role as the head of internal audit, again confirmation of our organisational independence. So it's all the statutory obligations that we talked about when we closed down 23-24 in the previous report. So we're now opening up 24-25 and we have to repeat all the same obligations again. So just for any avoidance of doubt, nothing has changed. We are still independent and we have, in my view, at the moment, appropriate resources to deliver this plan in 24-25. And if that changes significantly, of course, I will advise committee. Paragraph 15 is just a marker to say in the external quality assessment, which I mentioned earlier from last year, SIPFA found that we had a comprehensive planning process in place. So what sits behind this paper, the planning regime in this council for the audit plan, was found to be comprehensive by SIPFA, and they are the standard setters for public sector. So that's the sort of ultimate marker of your homework, I think, that you want. So that should give committee assurance in terms of what we're laying before you today. The plans also takes into account the priorities in the community plan and the strategic plan, and that mapping is included in the appendix. So as I mentioned earlier, it's a risk-based plan. We carry out consultation with colleagues. We look at what's happening elsewhere in the country. We look at what's going to be the best use of our time to deliver a value-added annual opinion to the council. As you know, it's a live plan, so paragraph 17 just puts a reminder down that should there be any new risks emerging that I feel need to be added to the plan, committee, in terms of good practice, committee give me the delegated authority to make those changes. But of course, we bring the changes back at mid-year to committee. So a live plan is always the best practice, and we never change it significantly because the plan is pretty usually turns out to be pretty resilient. There can be changes at the margin, and that's a good flexibility for the council. If we move on, internal audit charter, which is on, there's a link there to the charter. The charter was last changed in 25th of April 19 and approved on that day, by committee. There has been no need to change it since then. It's still fit for purpose. And my view is it's still fit for purpose. So every year committee considers that position and reapproves that plan, that charter, sorry. The charter will need to change once this international global review is completed and we actually know what the changes are for us operationally on the ground. Hopefully a sensible resolution will be found there. So what I'm saying today is internal audit charter, we have to look at it annually, and I'm saying it's still fit for purpose. The span of internal audit work's laid out at paragraphs 24 and 25. There's been no changes in that since I last reported to committee. Audit resources, which we've touched on earlier today, is laid out from paragraph 26 onwards, and there is no formula Audit Scotland a number of years ago had advised us that as long as we accommodate the high risk areas in the council, that's the main test for the plan, which is always what we aim to do. And we've laid out at paragraph 30 what our current complement is in terms of FTE. There is a national survey being carried out at the moment in terms of internal audit resourcing across Scotland, and that's been carried out by my Chief Auditor's group. So we'll bring that back to committee as soon as we can. Almost every council in Scotland has responded to that. I think there's only 2 councils that haven't responded, so there should be a good set of data there. But I know enough from what's happening elsewhere to know that we're in a pretty good place at the moment. I mentioned earlier, and it's laid out in paragraph 32, the proposed planned days for 24-25 are 966 days, the bulk of which will be delivered in-house. So that includes 23 days of outsourced computer audit, or up to 23 days. We don't always use all of the outsourced days. I usually squeeze a lot of value out of every day with them, so we don't always go up to the maximum number of days. But the bulk of that's been delivered in-house by myself and the team, and you'll see that compares well with the average over the last 5 years, which the average planned days have been 970, with the average days delivered 973. So we've been there or thereabouts over the last 5 years in terms of the number of internal audit days being delivered for the council and its partners. So if I move on to the plan at paragraph 36 and following, so the plan has been informed by the SIPFA aspirations laid out in the untapped potential document, which is, there's a reminder of that at paragraphs 34 and 35. We brought that previously to committee, and there's a copy of that document on the councillors' notice board. The key consideration laid out at paragraph 38 is where, as a council, where do we get our assurance from? So that's really what our work is designed, is to give officers assurance and elected members assurance. The plan is presented slightly differently this year. So the plan's presented at Appendix 3 in 1 page. I normally give you loads of pages with loads of detail of every single task we're going to do. What I've done this year is actually we've put global allocations in against the priorities for the plan, and then we'll give you the detail of how we are deploying those days when we come back at mid-year and in the annual report. But what I'm asking you today is to approve the plan at Appendix 3, which has got the global drivers in it, and I'll go over those in a second. So paragraph 40 just gives you assurance that core systems, so payroll and the significant financial systems and purchasing are all included in our risk assessment, and we have a rolling cover of those core systems. The work, there's 2 areas that are driving our work for 24-25, one of which is to expand our continuous auditing work, which is basically making the best use of the data that the council has to identify outliers, to identify fraud, to identify error, but more importantly to give assurance to services through looking at whole populations of data as opposed to looking at samples of data, which has been the traditional internal audit approach. So we've been training up our staff to do this, and we've been developing our arrangements. There also in the last year has been a national group set up to benchmark continuous auditing and data analytics across internal audit teams in Scotland, and we're on that group, and we are sharing experiences with that group. Audit Scotland have also put us in touch with the head of data analytics at Audit Scotland, and we've got a session with that officer and their team lined up in the short term. And we'll look at just exchanging experience there and looking to make sure we benchmark our work in this area as much as possible, because this is a development for us as a team to do things differently, but hopefully more effectively for the council, to provide wider coverage for the council and to provide more assurance for the council. And it also aligns well with the digital culture that we're establishing in the council through the digital strategy. The other driver for the plan, bearing in mind the unprecedented challenges for the council, and particularly in terms of financial sustainability, is actually just to have deep dives into how are we spending our money. So we are accountable to the community for all the money we spend, and those unprecedented challenges, I think, have led me to allocate quite a big section of our audit days to look at procurement, to look at commissioning, to look at how we're measuring work that's done on the ground, to look at how we're monitoring those inputs, how we're monitoring outputs and impacts of what we spend. So it's those are the two drivers to the plan, looking at the assurance that we can deliver through continuous auditing and data analytics, and also having a deep dive into the spend that's been made in the council. So those two, there'll be, like I think somebody mentioned a Venn diagram earlier, there are overlaps between those two, but that's the two main focuses of the plan at Appendix 3. There is room in the plan for other demands, so we've allocated days for visiting schools to look at establishment funds. I think we've agreed with Linda we're going to do a pretty comprehensive coverage of the schools over the next year. We've been out to three schools this year and, you know, found good arrangements in place, but they've been kind of, we haven't visited for a wee while because of COVID, so we're catching up in those visits. We've still got unannounced visits to stores, for example. We've got contingencies in for small advisory, and that's where we don't actually allocate a section of our plan to anything, and that's where services can come along and ask for advice. You know, it could be business continuity, it could be any area in the council, and the last few years we've been up almost 100 items in that small advisory area each year, so it's well used, so we're approachable. I think we're hopefully people find the advice useful because they keep coming back, so that's always a good indicator. So the plan, although it has the two drivers in it, has also got the flexibility in it, and we're covering some of the key areas that you would expect us to be covering, including our anti-fraud work, and will be available to support the annual self-assessment of committee as well. Paragraph 47 gives you assurance that anything deferred from the 23-24 plan has been considered for the 24-25 plan. There's only one item that's been dropped, which is a review of manual payments, which are tend to be known as telebank payments, and work by the head of people and culture has reduced the risk there, and overall we're happy that there's no value to be added by us going in there and having a look, but everything else, members, has been accommodated in the current year plan. And paragraphs 48 and 49, just putting the marker down for the days that we're proposing to be allocated for the work we do for the IGIB and the Leisure Trust. And as you know, their audit committees then determine the use of those days in line with the risk for those entities, and that all those arrangements are in hand as well. And Chair, I think that's everything I wanted to say. Happy to go over any detail in the appendices, but I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that very detailed analysis. I love your comments in paragraph 38, page 185. In local government, there's no substitute for doing the boring really well. I think that's particularly good. I like the 3 lines of defence model. That's quite interesting, and that's good. Just one question I would like to ask. When you're talking about further analysis of what we actually do, measuring what we do on the ground, could you just give us an example of what you do there, please?
So we did an exercise in Ayrshire last year, which was a measurement job. So we're going to use that model and look at some other areas. So we look at spend under specific contracts, and my team go out and they actually measure what we've paid for. They'll go out and see, okay, how much did we pay for in terms of road resurfacing? We'll go out and measure that, and we'll look at the evidence of how it was measured by the service as well. So it's that kind of work on the ground. So we're out there, we're hands-on, you know, we're looking at what are the controls in place within services to check that before we pay for anything, that we've got what we've ordered and it's of the quality that we expect as well. So we will also independently go out, quite often with services, we'll go out with services because we're not experts in all these technical areas, but we'll challenge them and we'll ask them to evidence how areas were measured. So I hope that gives you a sort of flavour, Chair.
Thank you. That is very interesting because I guess on a sort of purely pragmatic basis, as elected members, one of the things that comes back to all of us is potholes. And that pothole was filled in and 2 days later it sort of unfilled itself. You know, do we measure things like that?
In terms of the potholes wasn't included in the scope, but in terms of the technical reasons there, I think we need to be a roads engineer who tackled that. I'm certainly not a roads engineer, but I've heard a number of explanations over the years. But yes, we would that may come into the scope. We look at where the risks are, where the big spend is, and we would focus our attention on those areas.
Thank you very much. So if I can open that up, please. Any further questions? Councillor Canning, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Ellie, for that. Just under the paragraph 45, page 186, unannounced visits to stores, is that under licensing? Is that alcohol sales stores, or what exactly is that?
Our stores are council stores.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I was.
Aye. Sorry, no, you're absolutely right. That's open to interpretation. I'll need to think of a better way of saying it. So it's our stock.
I think under 21 days seemed quite a lot for that, but as an audit, you know. But
we've got quite a few.
No, I mean for what I was thinking, but obviously for what you're.
Right, okay. So we've got health and social care stores where aids and adaptations are stored. We've got stores at house and asset services. We've got stores in roads. We've got a number of depots which are in South Ayrshire and in East Ayrshire. So there's quite a number of locations. So we will physically go out to the locations and count the stock. We never do year-end stock counts because it's always perfect at the year-end. When you're getting it checked over for the accounts, it's always usually perfect at that point. We tend to go out and we'll look it's not just a simple stock count. We'll look at the controls with stock, look to make sure we're not buying too much, look at the different ways in which that's been managed. And we've also got stocks elsewhere in the council, just catering stocks, etc. So we don't hold significantly high levels of stock, but it is an area that we don't spend a lot of time on it, and we don't do it every year. But it was an area that we couldn't do very well during COVID because of the restrictions in place. So we're just picking up some of those areas now.
Thank you very much. Have you another question?
Well, just an ICT cyber contingency, what exactly is covered in that? Is that the business continuity bit of IT, or what exactly is? No.
It can be anything. So that's a contingency. We've had a huge programme of work across ICT and cyber for the last number of years. We base that risk on the National Cyber Security Centre, 10 area risks, which have actually changed recently. So we're remapping that. So it could be anything from looking at home working, which we've done before. Generally, the work we do in this council around ICT and cyber gives good assurance to officers and members. So in 24-25, we don't have a specific new job to carry out, but we do have a number of follow-up jobs. So the contingency is just in case something arises that we need to respond to. And that we've had a detailed discussion with Joe in terms of that approach for next year. So there will be coverage of ICT and cyber through the follow-up work that we do, and all those follow-ups are you'll be given updates on those in due course. And we do have assets under contract to deliver that work. So that's what that could be anything. It just depends in terms of what comes up in terms of risk. So that's additional contingency on top of the follow-up work that we've got scheduled in the plan.
Okay, I've read it as the audit being IT cyber contingency as opposed to a contingency of days for IT and cyber audit. So that's
Right,
clear
okay.
now. Thanks.
Any further questions? Councillor Maven.
Thank you again, Chair. Ellie, can I ask if we also audit at smaller scale down at community level, the likes of community grants going out or PB grants, even though the money perhaps doesn't come from the council, it maybe comes from wind farms or other sources. Do we follow up and make sure that
We do.
the community
Yes,
are
we do.
spending the money correctly?
Through you, Chair. So we do. Again, depends on risk. And there's a report on place-based funding that we produced last year. So that's on the Councillor's Notice Board. There's various other reports on the Councillor's Notice Board. We would tend to, the better value for us is looking at the arrangements. So we would prefer to get involved at the beginning when the arrangements are being established for any new fund, rather than tracking individual amounts, because that's for officers to do in individual services. We can go in and spot check though if we need to, and if there's any allegations made, we would tend to be involved in that as well, but they're thankfully few and far between. So yes, we do look at the controls there, and we're actually working with some services at the moment to develop new systems to manage those types of funds. But again, I mentioned the continuous auditing earlier, and making better use or more use of data analytics in our team, and that will lend itself to providing assurance over these types of areas as well. And it all falls under the umbrella of following the public pound, because we need to make sure we track every pound that leaves this council to another, so if it goes to another third sector body, we need to track that pound to its destination. So that absolutely informs our audit plan, but obviously we can't look at everything. So that's why I would prefer to work with services and look at what are the arrangements and controls you're putting in place, and tackle that at the beginning of any new programme of funding.
Okay. Any further questions? No, thank you very much. And I think with that, we'll take on board all the recommendations. Thank you. And then we move on to the final item on the agenda, and that's back to Linda and team. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Incredibly conscious. I'm last on the bill, and clearly time being of the essence. So members, delighted to present to you this report in respect of secondary school leaver attainment. Can I highlight, members, this refers to the academic year 22-23, and this follows data released to us in February 2024. So members, in paragraph 2, there's several recommendations, clearly to recognise the positive destinations, the literacy and numeracy, the achievement and wider qualifications. Clearly, to note your congratulations, we hope, for the young people on their achievement, to recognise the support that they receive from their communities, their parents, their teachers and staff in and around our schools and centres. Members, paragraphs 3 through 9 are the technical background to Insight, which, as you will know already, is our Scottish benchmarking tool that we use. Paragraph 6 highlights this comes out twice a year. So the release we're looking at just now is the February release, which is the national data. We also have a release in September, which is the local benchmarking, and that reflects the exam results from the immediate exam diet before. So the data we're talking about today, members, is already rather aged in its very nature. Members, paragraph 10 and 11 set out the vision for East Ayrshire in education. Clearly, our sovereign plan referenced is our community plan, and clearly our strategic plan 22-27. In addition, we clearly put our colours in respect of the education service plan 21 through 24, which is now undergoing final rewrite before being sent out for further consultation, members. Members, paragraph 12 refers to the DYW, developing the young workforce, and the clear connections that we see in this report between positive destinations and clearly the achievements of our young people in East Ayrshire and indeed nationally. Members, paragraph 13 and 14 refer to the SCQF, or the Scottish Credit and Qualifications Framework. That is appendicised to this document because clearly the currency in education moves on swiftly from those of us who remember O-levels, O-grades, etc., to standard grades, into nationals, intermediates, and clearly the exam system that we sit within now, members. So that is appendicised to ensure that the levels of these qualifications are known and understood. Members, paragraphs 15 through 19 cover the curriculum, the definition of curriculum and the delivery of curriculum and that which sits inside of the curriculum, because it's clearly wider than just a range of subjects. And members, I would draw your attention in particular to paragraph 19 to see some of the range of awards that are actually contained within this particular report. And I'm actually delighted to see for the first time in this report, not the first time for foundation apprenticeships, but the first time for 2 foundation apprenticeships in civil engineering and indeed social sciences, and I would ask you to note those, that they are now reportable on Insight. Members, paragraph 20 looks at the breakdown of our leavers historically from 2014-15 through to now. That's broken down in accordance with the stage. So this full report is every single leaver, be they from S4, S5 or S6. So you'll note, members, in 22-23, 1,306 young people left us, with 231 of that 1,306 being at the S4 stage. So already we note, members, a significant increase in the S4 leavers that was referred to in an earlier report in that particular regard. Table 3 represents that, simply broken, members, into percentages. And again, you'll see that reflective rise now being 18%. Members, paragraphs 21 to 23 offer that further commentary, indeed sought through earlier questions. So I hope that's now being covered. So clearly we note a rise in the S4s leaving school, and members, these young people would have been S1, 2 during COVID. So again, there's that whole piece around about how secure they've been in their whole school environment through that time. So I offer that as some offer of mitigation in that particular space. And S6, in sort of quantum to that, they account for 48% of the overall school leavers. It is the lowest point again, but members, what you will see is again in one we'll see a reduction in the other if young people are not staying on for the totality of that particular experience. Members, paragraph 22 breaks down somewhat further in regards to the partnership working that goes on with SDS, Ayrshire College and local employers. Clearly we see that those young people who left us in S4, almost 60% of them went to FE. Clearly a 6% increase there. However, that also brings with it risks, members, that I'll discuss later in this paper. Paragraph 23, members, also highlights significant change in the context of comparing year on year. So nationally, it is recognised that young people leaving in any stage other than S6 will indeed leave with lesser qualifications, other than those S5s who potentially are off to university early, members. Members, paragraphs 24 onwards take us into the domain of those initial destinations, having broken down the leaver stages. You'll see those highlighted here, members. There are 2 definitions for destinations. They are either positive or non-positive, and those are listed for you. They are further broken down for you, members, in Appendix 4, because clearly the categorisation of non-positive destinations can be quite complex, and indeed a non-positive destination for a young person, just to highlight some of my commentary later, can also be a gap year. So where that young person has left S6 and they're off travelling, that's also deemed to be a non-positive destination, despite the fact it's a route that a lot of our young people take. Members, in paragraph 25, referencing table number 4, you will see the list of school leavers going on to a positive destination. This year we have 95.1, virtual comparator of 95.69 and a South West collaborative. So clearly, members, the first question I would expect from you is how did that actually occur? And we will cover that further in more commentary in detail as to where we think there has been a slight reduction in that figure. Members, paragraph 26 splits this in terms of the actual destinations themselves, vis-a-vis employment, further education and higher education. And paragraph 27, members, is that additional narrative that I promised you. So, members, the majority of East Ayrshire S4 school leavers went to further education. You'll see that's compared with a virtual figure of 45, we're 59, and nationally that figure is 52. However, what we do note, members, is a lot of young people then do not sustain those college places, and we've actually begun a raft of interventions with other services now to look at what happens to those young people if they do indeed drop out of their college courses. And we've actually found a significant number of young people headed to college on what we would know as the exceptional entry ticket, where they can actually leave as winter leavers and start in August at college, because clearly there's not as many college courses starting in January. So that's one of the phenomena of the data we've already seen, members, and work is already underway in that regard. Members, the rest of the commentary is there for your perusal in regards to S5. Again, majority of our S5 go to further ed, and the majority of our S6 are off to higher ed, and that's 64%. Appendix 5, again, members, provides some further detail in that particular space. Members, paragraph 28 explains a little bit further around the S4 piece. Clearly, we note the positivity in our destinations figure of 95.1%, but clearly we don't stop until it's 100. At the time of data collection, 64 East Ayrshire school leavers were not in a positive destination, and it's important to note for some of these young people to have taken a positive destination immediately upon leaving school, but the census data for Insight had not sustained, so they might have gone there. And again, I'll pick up issues on follow-up later on. Members, paragraph through 29 through 32 explains some of the collaboration in the space that takes place to support the young people when they do leave school and find themselves in those new destinations. But clearly that reach, members, when they leave schools can be difficult to manoeuvre and work within. Members, moving on to the qualifications specifically, presenting to you in paragraphs 33 through 35, the attainment data in literacy and numeracy. Members, I hope that you know, as I do, paragraph 35, SCQF4 performance in literacy and numeracy is the highest ever recorded for East Ayrshire Council at 91.04. So these are young people, regardless of what stage they left us, these are young people who leave us with both literacy and numeracy at level 4. It's the first time we've ever been in the 90s. We're clearly absolutely delighted with that, and we're 5 points ahead of the virtual comparator. And again, members, you'll note the first time we've actually been ahead of the national figure. So we're incredibly proud of our young people and staff for that achievement. Members, the same can also be said at level 5. Young people leaving our establishments with level 5 literacy and numeracy is at an all-time East Ayrshire high of 71.75%, around about 7% ahead of where the virtual comparator says we should be, and indeed, members, 3% ahead of the national figure. So again, we're absolutely delighted that despite COVID and all that it brought, these outcomes for our young people are something I think we should all be rightly proud of. Members, we do note a slight slip at SCQF level 6, and just to give everyone a point of reference, this is young people doing hires. Okay, so members, we don't have all of our young people going through to do hires, but clearly we see a slight slippage there between 23.89 and 23.66. You'll note, however, members, that literacy and numeracy were 4 percentage points ahead of the virtual comparator, and also, members, ahead of national here. So these are young people who, in effect, if you want to call it that, it would be higher, leaving us with higher maths and higher English, regardless of what stage they left. However, that's generally S5 and 6 if they've achieved hires. Members, pushing through the rest of the paper and moving on to paragraphs 37 through 39. Clearly at this stage, members, we're talking about qualifications in their widest sense at whatever SCQF level these are attained. Again, members, it's an incredibly positive picture in paragraph 38. Members, 1 or more qualifications. So this is all of our young people who got 1 or more at SCQF4. It's an absolutely phenomenal 97.32. And please know, members, this includes all of our young people who left school. We're ahead of the virtual, we're ahead of the Southwest, and again, members, ahead of the national figure, which again I think is something that our council should be rightly proud of. Members, moving on to the same measure at level 5, one or more qualification at SCQF level 5, you'll see again, it's not our best ever figure, but it's an increase on 21-22. So we'll take that one in the context of COVID, very much aligned and indeed ahead of our virtual comparator, slightly under the South West Collaborative and slightly under the national figure. Members, moving on to the level 6 qualifications, you'll see we have seen some slight slippage here. However, if you note, members, that's also been the case on the national figures and the South West Collaborative figures, again, in terms of the impact on hires. And I would just remind members that we are still seeing, if the young person is in S6, these are still young people who weren't examined officially during COVID times back in S4. So we do still have some strange phenomena coming through the data. And for reassurance of members, there's nothing in there that would give me any grave cause for concern. Members, moving on to paragraph 40, there's clearly some really positive messages arising from the data. They're all noted for you in each of the bullet points. Members, in terms of further mitigation in paragraph 41, we are now at the stage of having a final discussion with our heads about the potential format of our education service plan for 24-27. So you can be reassured that that will be with you shortly for further discussion, consultation, and indeed your own influence as members as to the direction of travel for the education service. So members, in paragraph 42, we note the pride that I hope you share with me in each and every young person, particularly given that these figures still contain COVID lag and their achievements. And we would also recognise the support and encouragement that the young people receive from their parents, teachers, support staff and partners in here. Members, in terms of implications, there are none listed in terms of the preparation of this report, and there are 7 appendices to the report which are listed for you in the appendices themselves, members. So happy to take any questions at that stage, Chair.
Linda, thank you very much to you and your team and all the schools for this. And I'm going to refer back to some of the points that were raised earlier in the context of the earlier reports, which I think there was a point raised by yourself and by yourself. So, Councillor Richardson, if you want to go back to your question.
Yeah, thank you. Aye, sorry, guy. Yeah, that's fair point, Chair. I think across East Ayrshire, all the members were quite impressed with the overall figure for East Ayrshire. Our 5th and 6th years heading off to positive destinations, and it was just with the the Doon Valley campus obviously having some issues. My question earlier was, how quickly could the new management team at Doon Valley bring Doon up to those sort of average levels, if you like? But I think the overall picture in the report, Linda, is really positive.
Thank you, and thank you for reminding us. That was the point. Sorry, I'd forgotten what it was, but I knew there was something important that needed to be reintroduced there. That it was in relation to the Doon view.
So again, members, I would just re-highlight, as Ailey did, we published the figures for each school as part of all of this, and they're always made available to members. So again, I'd be happy to take any specific questions on Doon, but again, the attainment varies per year group. In all of our schools, you can have years going through that are more difficult than others in all sorts of respects. And again, those young people, so the amount of variance in here, Councillor Richardson, you're absolutely right to pick up on. Clearly at a school in the likes of Doon, you can have a situation where one young person's worth 2% of their attainment, given the small size of the cohorts going through. So again, I would just ask members that when you do analyse that data further, given that it is available to you on your portal, that what I would say is, again, just to exercise caution in regards to any interpretation of that data, given the small cohort sizes. But indeed, if you flip that to RBA, absolutely huge cohort sizes in terms of those young persons involved. But again, I think Councillor Richardson, as did members here, I think we took great comfort from the actions that were already ongoing and being undertaken in respect of Mr Robertson's appointment to Doon to ensure that, I think, Councillor Richardson, the point you're making is that every young person, regardless of schools, got the same opportunities to fare well. So yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Richards.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I put you on the spot.
No, it's
did you want to come back in?
Sorry?
Did you want to come back in on that?
No, it was just that last point made by Linda. I think that's the ultimate aim, isn't it? Is to make sure that no matter where the kid comes from in the authority, no matter what, social economic background they come from, how much poverty is in the area, all of that, it's, trying to give every kid the same chances, aren't we?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just focusing back on the previous reports we got from corporate about the sickness absence levels. I'm wondering how that affects you with your head count across your department. How it affects school reports, where you have a strong school and your absence is low and you've got a full complement of teachers, we would be thinking you would get a very good school report. And perhaps where you're thinking absence is higher and there's people missing and you get chop and change with staff coming in and out, that can affect the report in the longer term, or is it not as simple as that? Is there more going on? It's a very good report and a very positive report, in spite of, as we have been showing earlier, absence being a problem. And are you actively recruiting at most of your schools still?
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Mayor. It's a really important point. I think if you spoke to each of my secondary heads over the past couple of years, they would all say it's been very, very difficult in terms of sickness absence for a lot of reasons. Clearly, we've all seen a changed demography in terms of COVID and ongoing issues for staff. So ultimately, it comes down to a daily exercise and indeed a strategic exercise, and possibly putting my ex-head teacher hat on myself in terms of it's always up to that good judgment. And this is where I need to single my secondary heads out for praise, because ultimately they perform that cover, or one of their deputies does, in terms of who's covering what class. And indeed several of my secondary heads, as I used to do, have all been out actively teaching in the past year to protect certain subject areas, because ultimately if you take a school, the example of Doon is a really good one. You may have a one-person department whereby if that person goes off sick, you're then into the supply scene. So really I would hate to think that absence in the short term would have an impact, but absence in the longer term, where particularly it's small departments that can't internally cover. So there's a huge amount of mechanisms and supports a school can use to undertake that cover in both the short, medium and long term, Councillor Mabon, and they do so. And I'd need to say thanks to my secondary teams who do that on a daily basis when the phone calls come in and clearly the police takes are issued out to staff to cover those lessons, or indeed out to supply in the longer term. But I suppose to answer your question, I can't turn round and say it would have an influence on inspection as such, unless there's ongoing absence issues. So in the longer term, that could have an impact on an inspection report, but in the kind of short and medium term, it's incredibly well managed. It's incredibly time consuming. I've seen some schools, it's 160 periods of cover going out on one particular day. If you take a big campus like Grange, if you've got 12 or 13 staff off, you can be covering them. And it's a huge, huge undertaking for the team. So I think probably to come back with a kind of counter offer, I think I would just probably like to say, I don't think these figures would be as good if my secondary heads and their teams weren't as adept at actually managing some of those absences, if that makes sense. I think if we were, not as agile in that space, those figures wouldn't be the positive ones that we're seeing today. And indeed, kind of reflecting back on that, I think it's where there's longer term absence, you might see an impact on a school's inspection. But as you say, it's not an exact science.
Councillor Richardson.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Sally. I was just going to, when Linda mentioned something that was pretty interesting, even a big school at the Grange. So when the management team at the Grange flag up to you, Linda, remember on a Monday morning, Linda, we've got 13 teachers absent. What's the process behind that? How quickly can you get supply resource into the Grange to make sure that there aren't the kids sitting in classes with no teacher?
Okay, so supply's centralised. So thankfully, or I don't think I would be sitting here alive, to be quite honest, Councillor Richardson, it doesn't come through to me. What we do have is heads do call us if they're in a kind of mission critical situation, because you can reach a stage where you're thinking you're not actually able to run your school. Okay, so they would alert us if they reached that mission critical stage where they didn't think they had enough person power to run their school effectively. So ultimately, it's a job that the heads do. They plan for it. Most of the absences, there can be notified absence, like somebody going out on a course or something else, or long-term absence where that person's expected to be off. So the supply booking system's centralised for them, and office staff and admin staff. There's a huge range of supports go round about that. It's a really complex, but as I say, really time-consuming job. So, but where we do get a scenario whereby a school is at danger of not being able to run, that's when we step in. Or for exceptional circumstances where the school, I'll take a funeral as a really horrible example. If a school needs to cover staff to attend something like that, we'll then bring in other teams. So we often offer ourselves out there because we're still GTCS registered in the main, to say, if it came to it, back in. So, ultimately, there's always, again, I'll go back to Ailey's 3 lines of defence. So we offer staff in if we reach that mission critical stage, but clearly we need to always be thinking as a head teacher that mission critical stuff's got to be to support the young people who are in the exam phase to make sure they're not jeopardised. So they'll always be prioritised in that space.
Thank you very much for that. And I almost didn't want to ask, do you have to go back in? But Councillor Canning, thank you.
Thanks. And to reiterate all colleagues' comments, I mean, obviously it's a very positive report. The questions, I've already apologised because the questions I asked earlier are very clearly articulated in the report, and I hope this one's not. But do we, in terms of positive destinations, and go back to the earlier question, demographics, do we track positive destinations in East Ayrshire versus positive destinations outside? I know they're not always going to stay, but I mean, the more we can work to keep people in, whether it's, apprenticeships or whatever.
The short answer to that's no. Okay, so we do know where they are, if that makes sense, but we don't produce an East Ayrshire specific type. So while there's an East Ayrshire specific report on where they all went, we wouldn't be drilling down to what those locations were. It's literally just the type. So if it's employment in London, it's employment, and if it's further education in Durham, it's further education. So the bit is, to answer, long story short, Councillor Canning, is very much just the actual categorisation of where the young person went. In that we would have information on some of the stuff in the terms of East Ayrshire, so Ayrshire College type. So where that information would be easy to access, we would have that, but we don't do a specific drill down on East Ayrshire geographically based destinations, if that makes any sense at all.
So are you saying it's obviously, to be useful, it would need to be complete, and getting that complete data set might be challenging, because obviously in terms of planning, presumably it would be.
Yeah, getting the data set is really, really difficult. So, and I'll pick up Councillor Mabin's point from earlier. So we do the snapshot when they've left, we do a 6-month follow-up and a 1-year follow-up. So actually the better measure of destinations is actually the participation measure that you would have seen in the SPIs earlier on. The 16 to 19 participation measure gives you an even more rounded measure of where the young people are and what they're doing, and you can see that one listed in the SPIs. That's got a bit more longevity to it. These are all very much on that particular day that the snapshot was taken. What were they doing? That's why we were so disappointed, because actually 64 of our young people that were showing negative were positive the following week. It's that bit whereby there's a piece of work going on, but it's whenever the government take that snapshot is what we will clearly be bringing to you in terms of good governance and using the right measures, rather than, adapting those in any shape or form, very much census based.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Richardson, thank you.
Thanks, Sally. Thanks, Chair. It was just to come back on Stephen's point, and I think I know where Stephen is maybe thinking behind asking if we know where the positive destinations are, because I have a real fear for East Ayrshire that we know we're a sort of low wage economy, and I have this fear that our brightest, most successful kids, I think we're possibly suffering what I would call a brain drain, because you mentioned London, Linda, and there's Glasgow, and I get it that, because I've done it myself, I get it that people follow that you've got to do the best yourself in life. You've got to follow the money, but I just wonder how we're going to break this. This cycle of East Ayrshire being a sort of low wage type economy, and how do we retain our high flyers? Maybe not to work in East Ayrshire, but how do we retain them to reside in East Ayrshire? And if we knew, I think possibly that's where Stephen was going, if we knew where they were actually ending up, then it's all about transport links and what have you to make sure that they can stay in their home area, but they can travel to earn the big money, which everybody wants to do. You know, we all want to be successful in life.
Yeah, through you, Chair. I think the key answer to that, Councillor Richardson, lies in another plan, and that's through the CPP around about mitigating against that. I think that's the only thing we can do. By tracking where they're going just now, we're clearly pre the AGD coming into evolution and all the opportunities that might make. So I think it's upon us all, really, rather than where did they go, is how do we keep them. So I think by all of us clearly standing behind our sovereign plan as a council, which is our community plan, and putting our shoulders and elbows behind it, I think that's actually how we counteract that. So I would totally agree. It's not something we want to see happening, but I think really what it does is it puts further impetus on making sure that this next iteration of the community plan is a really good one. So that would be where I would go with that one.
And
I mean,
just to say on that one, Linda, you're quite heavily involved in that, aren't you? So yeah.
I mean, bottom line, we want our youngsters who are
To stay.
and especially the ones that have become, you know, economically active. Yeah, we want them to be living in East Ayrshire and spending their money in East Ayrshire, but you know, we then need to facilitate how they can commute backwards and forwards, etc.
Catherine, did you want to come back? Was it David? Did you want to come in on that point? Yes.
I think probably not now, because I think Linda has the answer. It was just to be helpful. I think the thrust of this is that what's important is the respective types of destinations. That's the absolute priority and purpose of this paper, is to track where they end up and the types of destinations rather than the location of those destinations. If I'm right, then UWS are obviously in Ayr, but subject to them having any presence in East Ayrshire, then any East Ayrshire pupil recorded as going to university, it wouldn't be in East Ayrshire, because it'd be wherever the universities are, which is everywhere else, unless UWS have a position in East Ayrshire as opposed to the college. So we also don't record the type of paid employment, we record the fact of the employment. So it wouldn't give you any insight whether folk are in low paid jobs here or low paid jobs somewhere else, or high paid jobs here or high paid jobs somewhere else. It doesn't come from this report. There are other arrangements. You're correct, but recording where they are, I don't know that we need to capture that level of information to know that people will migrate to the bigger populous centres, be it Glasgow, Edinburgh or London, where the big jobs are. So that issue about facilitating people if the jobs aren't here is how do we get our people to the jobs, is one we can be cited on and take forward under their arrangements in the other areas of activity of the council. But we need to watch sometimes that we don't try and include everything in every report, because this is about attainments and destinations. And the other issues you raised, we talked about depopulation earlier, and yes, nobody's sitting here saying we shouldn't do whatever we can to try and not reverse that, but mitigate that, minimise that, reverse some of those effects. But it won't all be done through every single paper. So I think in terms of the way this is approached, in terms of recording the destinations, I would absolutely support the position. It wouldn't really add much value to this. It might actually confuse and detract from what is, and it's not about it just being a good news story, but it absolutely is. It's about where are our young people going, where are your pupils going after school, and in terms of the destinations, the location is of some interest, but wouldn't really add much to this report. And we also wouldn't have anything to compare it with because there's not another council in Scotland. And I think the final point is we need to remember we've got 32 authorities, some of which aren't very big. I take my dog for a walk up at Cathkin and I go through 3 local authority areas just to get there and back between here, South Lanark and Glasgow. So those aren't big geographical areas. Therefore, there's always going to be cross-border travel with these destinations. But the positives are the destinations and the outputs from the schools, I think.
Thank you, David, for focusing that. Thank you very much. I think that's everything done. Linda, thank you very much, and please pass on a big thank you from all of us to you and your team. Thank you very much. And with that, that's the meeting at an end. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Vote of thanks to the chair as well.